Welcome and thank you all for attending our talk. Today we present some findings from our ongoing investigation into Maya metalworking from the Mensabak region of Chiapas, Mexico. Our analysis primarily focuses on finds that were excavated in 2016 from the site of Tzunun. We situate our finds within the broader regional and post-classic and to early Spanish colonial period context. Evidence of Maya metalworking is still limited across the southern lowlands, and in terms of Chiapas, is typically not discussed outside of the highlands. Thus, our finds begin to fill a gap in terms of production, exchange, and everyday life in the rainforests of Chiapas after the Classic period. In this talk, we will provide a brief overview of the study of past Maya metalworking. Then we delve into our case study of Tzunun. When appropriate, we situate our finds within the broader region of Mensabak. Our case study focuses on finds made in an area of Tzunun labeled as Suboperation E, which revealed a wealth of artifacts, including remains of metalworking, which were associated with a dense concentration of artifacts and a charcoal deposit. We will also cover some of the experimental archaeology being done by Josue Gomez Vasquez that seeks to reveal further clues into past processes of metal production in Mensabak. Last, we provide some conclusions. Often a topic of curiosity, metalworking is gaining greater scholarly attention in Mesoamerican archaeology. In the Maya area, the first evidence of metal artifacts dates to the early Classic period, but the vast majority of metallurgical data and artifacts pertain to post-Classic and later contexts. Thanks to increasing research into archaeometallurgy and the post-Classic period, evidence of Maya copper production in the form of crucibles, prills, pigs, ingots, sprues, and miscast objects have been recovered in the Guatemalan highlands and further north at sites in Yucatan and Belize. This research has demonstrated metal artifacts are strongly tied to people of high status as a luxury good and perhaps as a realm of elite craft production. At the very least, copper-based artifacts were made by specialists within Maya communities. Following Cockerell and Simmons, we use the term copper-based because Mesoamerican peoples tended to blend copper with other metals to create finished products, and current elemental analysis of metal artifacts from Mensabak support this assertion. Some issues to consider in the study of Maya metalworking are that generally small sample sizes continue to hinder metallurgical investigations in many parts of the Maya area, especially in the southern Maya lowlands, with even less understood about local processes of production in this part of the Maya world. Recent finds at Tzunun, a site on the fringes of the southern lowlands, allow us to provide insights into the issue of local production through evidence of metalworking associated with a household. Situated within the Naha Mensabak UNESCO Biosphere Reserve and the smaller region of Mensabak, Tzunun is a roughly 14-hectare site during the height of seasonal flooding. So it's a small to medium-sized site located on the southeastern shore of Lake Siwatna. The site was first occupied during the late pre-classic. However, most of the site's surface remains date to the late post-classic and early Spanish colonial period. The expansion of settlement during the late post-classic was accompanied by the building of fortifications and a civic ceremonial group. In addition to increasing population, excavations revealed Tzunun's residents lived in a socially stratified community during the late post-classic and early Spanish colonial period. So during this time, elites had greater access to rare and exotic items such as jade, obsidian, and copper. And for more information about the site and its history, see Hernandez 2017 and 2023. We uncovered evidence of metalworking as part of a broader sampling strategy designed to investigate Tzunun's occupational history and socioeconomic organization. In collaboration with the community of Puerto Bello Mensabak, we conducted a full coverage survey and mapped 5.65 hectares of the site. Additionally, we excavated Tzunun's fortifications and ritual administrative areas. And I should note that the map coverage has been extended through area LiDAR mapping that was conducted 4 years ago. So due to the lack of surface artifacts within Tzunun, we excavated 30 by 30 centimeter shovel test pits, STPs, to locate midden associated with the site's residential occupation. Because midden typically accumulate outside of structures, we placed STPs 2 meters apart in a grid pattern that covered patios and other open areas. Once we found a concentration of artifacts, we placed a 2 by 2 meter test pit within the probable midden area. Altogether, through 15 test pits and 361 STPs, we sampled midden associated with the temple group and 11 of 65 potential residential mounds. Out of respect for Mexican stakeholder groups, we have yet to examine some of the ceramics recovered through STP sampling in Sub-Operation E. In cases where we could not fully examine excavated materials, we have developed methods of indirect dating. In Sub-Operation E, we found 3 copper-based artifacts, a bell fragment, a granule, and a drop-shaped residue. The latter 2 remains, which can be seen on the left, can only be obtained via the process of melting copper and emptying a crucible. A copper granule is a prill or a small round pellet of copper or copper-based alloys that can form during either the smelting process or the casting process. And the residual metal artifacts are likely evidence of casting copper-based alloys into bells, because bells are the only end products of metalworking that have been found in the Mensabak region. It is important to note that copper-based bells have only been found in Mensabak within the late Postclassic and early Spanish Colonial period contexts, which is also the time when evidence of Maya metalworking is most common. José Gómez Vázquez identified the prill and drop-shaped copper residue while examining materials recovered at Tzunun through STP sampling. These remains of metal production were found close to the surface, less than 30 centimeters in the northern part of our sampling grid in STP units P3 and P26, which you can see in the image on the right-hand side. And we reiterate that most artifacts recovered near the surface at Tzunun date to the late Postclassic and early Spanish Colonial period. Considering the shallow depth of their recovery and the overall pattern of metalworking finds within the Maya area, including Mensabak, we tentatively assigned an AD 1200 to 600 date to the remains of metalworking and bell fragment recovered from Tzunun. It is also important to note that excavation of the sole 2 by 2 meter test pit in Sub-Operation E revealed the rich assemblage in our sampling universe. This single unit of excavation produced over 10,000 ceramic fragments, 920 pieces of hute shell, 121 obsidian blades and flakes, and 207 microcrystalline quartz flakes. We also uncovered an abundance of fallen remains that included substantial portions of peccary and several other animal species such as white-tailed deer and red brocket deer. And just to give you a sense of how much material we found, this was a 2 by 2 meter unit that did not go deeper than 2.5 meters. So all of this came out of that area. And some of the fallen remains actually some of the fallen remains that we recovered contained evidence of cut marks and thermal alteration, which suggests they were processed for consumption as food. The burning and thermal alteration made sense because of the large cluster of charcoal concentrated in the center of our unit, which is what you can see on the left-hand side. The charcoal appeared to form the remains of a hearth. And then because above the charcoal, we found a concentric arrangement of stones that mirrors the distribution of charcoal within our unit. It is unclear whether the remains are the result of a feast or if the area we excavated was a dump site with artifacts in a secondary context. Yet a potential crucible was found in association with the charcoal and the wealth of other artifacts, including fallen remains that may have been utilized for metalworking. Thanks to the work of Yael Sanchez, we managed to classify tools made from different animals or animal bones. One of these is a deer long bone that may have been used to manipulate crucibles. This bone tool has a polished handle and at the other end burn marks ranging from minor to severe until the bone appears calcined. This is due to constant use and direct contact with fire. The polishing and burn marks suggest that the long bone functioned almost like tongs that could withstand direct fire, such as when moving a crucible in and out of a high temperature environment. For further information and analysis, see Hernandez 2017. But based on the recovered artifact assemblage, the area we sampled in Sub-Operation E was a midden for a late Postclassic to early Spanish Colonial period residence. The date was ascertained by a ceramic analysis and radiocarbon dating. This midden context provided clear evidence of metalworking in the form of a prill and drop-shaped residue, as well as a potential ceramic crucible and tong made from a deer long bone. To address some of our lingering questions, Josue Gomez Vasquez has learned contemporary Highland Chiapaneco smithing practices to develop a program of experimental archaeology. This work is designed to aid in the identification of tools, techniques, and processes in the handling and transformation of copper and copper-based materials in archaeological contexts. In the case of Tzunun, he has been examining the potential for local variation in casting techniques. We do not rule out the use of beeswax as an additional element for modeling bells, but we are investigating the potential use of soil and ash for casting. Soil and ash must have a consistency similar to modeling clay in order to imprint shapes, and animal fat can be used to achieve these consistencies, whether in soil or ash. These material elements are unlikely to leave macroscopic fragments in an archaeological context because they return to their original state or rapidly deteriorate because after being used in casting. Yet, there is the potential of microscopic or molecular remains for the use of this technique. One reason for pursuing this line of inquiry is that despite evidence of bell fragments and some elements of their production, we have yet to find molds at Tzunun or within the wider Mensabak region. And before getting into our conclusions, we present one final hypothesis. Preliminary analysis into metalworking within Mensabak are suggestive of a regionally organized process of copper-based artifact production and their distribution. At Tzunun, we have clear evidence of melting copper. Yet we see other distinct elements of production at other sites in the Mensabak region. At Sibat now, we have evidence of copper ingots. At the site of Los Olores, we have potential tools and smelting spaces for extracting copper. And the site of La Punta, which Joe Palca argues is the late post-classic regional seat of power, this site contains the greatest quantity of finished copper bells. Palca and colleagues have argued that La Punta's residents monitored controlled access to the adjacent sacred mountain of Chacactun, referred to as El Mirador in Spanish. This mountain, they argue, was a pilgrimage site that fueled the Mensabak region's political economy and likely attracted people with many different skills, including metalsmiths, who we argue then adapted their knowledge to craft ritually potent items that are created under locally specific conditions. So in conclusion, our sampling of Tzunun's dwellings uncovered evidence of metalworking to create copper-based artifacts. Definitive evidence of copper production includes a prill, a drop-shaped residue. Other potential evidence of copper production other potential sources of evidence for copper production are a potential crucible and a bone tong. Our ongoing work, including experimental archaeology, seeks to reveal further clues into past Maya metalworking that can help us clarify questions about local production processes, such as the potential use of soil or ash and animal fat to create molds. We will also work with Yael Sanchez to understand the formation processes of the midden we uncovered in Sub-Operation E. Lastly, we will continue to situate this work within the broader Mensabak region to understand how metalworking factored into the regional political economy. Thank you very much.